Yeah, we'll start our session by paying our obeisances to His Divine Grace Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, the founder Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. So, like we all know, we are stepping into the last chapter of the Bhakti Yoga section, and we'll be getting started with chapter 12 today. So, chapter 12, the title is Devotional Service, and there are 20 verses. So, it is comparatively a very short chapter, but it like the title says, devotional service. So, it has, it is very nectarian as well. So, but after the 12th chapter, we'll then be stepping into 13th, which will start the part 3, the Jnana Yoga section. Yeah. So, chapter 12, we have divided it for our convenience into 4 sections. And the first section is, which the first 3 sections is what we target to, finish today. The chapter starts with Arjuna's inquiry, as he's, asking a question to Krishna that who is better, a personalist or an impersonalist? And followed by that, we'll see, how Krishna, defines, personalist and impersonalist, as what their process is and what their destination is, and which is more perfect way of worshipping Krishna. And then shloka 8 to 12, it's really important shlokas section, which states the progressive stages of bhakti, and we'll try to complete until shloka 12 today. So with that, last week we completed chapter 11, and this was the last verse as well. And we also had this for recitation, right? So this shloka is where Krishna concluded the 11th chapter. And this is going to be, an important verse for us to connect this with 12th chapter. So Krishna concluded, 11th chapter by, saying that mat karma krin mat paramo, right? He said that, do karma, right? For mat karma krin. So do work for me, mat paramo, keep me as the supreme goal. Mat bhaktaha, perform devotional service to, right? Sangavarjitaha nirvairaha sarvabhiteshu. So he says that a person who is friendly to all, right? Every living entity, he certainly comes back to Krishna. That's what he says. Yes, samam eti pandava. Yeah. So mam, again he says, he certainly comes to me. Yeah. Now, when Krishna is highlighting, in this verse, so many times, again, mat, mad, mam, so many times, right? So to me, right? He's highlighting here the supremacy of devotional service, right? That attachment to his personal form, right, is the highest spiritual realization. So in even prior verses within the Bhakti Yoga section, several times we have seen, right, how Krishna is highlighting, mam, these terms again and again, right? Because he, that establishes his supremacy, that his personal form is the highest spiritual realization. Yeah. Now, we also saw in 11th chapter that where Krishna mentioned, that his Virat Rupa, his universal form is temporary because it manifests and it unmanifests. But his two-handed Shamsundar form, it is the rarest to see, right? He used the word Sudurdarshan, right? So it is the rarest form of Krishna, to see. And it is eternal, and also we learned that actually the two-handed form of Krishna is the source of all other forms, right? And that was very clear what we discussed, right? So now, stepping into the 12th chapter, the first section is where Arjuna asks a question, right? That his question is as who is better, a personalist or an impersonalist? you know, what is the supremacy overall. Yeah. Now, throughout our journey so far in Bhakti, in Bhagavad Gita, we have learned like different parts of worship, right? We learned about pure bhakti, which was the main component of the middle 6 chapters, right? And then we also learned about mixed bhakti, right? Because we learned in 9th chapter, right, where Krishna highlights that 4 classes of, they are also transcendentalists, they are devotees, that artho, arthartho, jnani, and jignasa, right? So these 4, they worship Krishna, but within result of expecting something back, right? So that is mixed bhakti, right? So we learned about pure bhakti, mixed bhakti, then we learned about universal form in the last chapter. We also learned, in bits and pieces in the middle 6 chapters, 7th and 9th chapter, about demigod worship. And now we are going to learn about impersonalism. Yeah. So last level is the impersonal worship. Yeah. So if we remember, we also discussed this, right? This was one of the questions raised by Hari Krishna Prabhuji before, like the Ekatvena, Pratatvena, and Vishvatvena. And in that, when we studied that, we also highlighted that about the, Ekatvena, people who worship in oneness. We will study about it. We'll learn a bit more about it in 12th chapter. And that this is where we are going. Krishna is going to tell about impersonals, that kind of worship. Now, so the first verse of 12th chapter, like we know, it is Arjuna's question, and it starts with, Arjuna uvacha, evam satata yukta ye bhakta stvam paryupasate ye chapi aksharam avyaktam tesham te yoga vittamaha. So Arjuna inquired, which are considered to be more perfect? Those who are always properly engaged in your devotional service, or those who worship the impersonal Brahman, the unmanifested? Right? So here, see the first line, we are talking here about 2 classes of transcendentalists, right? The first is evam satata yuktai, someone who is continuously satata, right? Engaged. Yeah. And bhaktas tvam paryupaste. So these bhaktas who are continuously engaged, in you, or the one who are, in line with, impersonalists. That is, they, they look at, they worship aksharam avyaktam. Aksharam avyaktam. So aksharam is, something which is beyond our senses. Yeah. And avyaktam is, which is unmanifested. Right? So these are the 2 classes of people, which we are talking about here. Now, Arjuna is asking, we have to understand that why is Arjuna asking this question, right? He's asking this question to kind of, secure his position, right? As whether the kind of bhakti he is doing, the personal form, is it the best way to worship Krishna? That's what he wants to know. He's asking to know whether Krishna is fully satisfied with his approach of bhakti. And this is, that is the thing, right? The pure bhakti, we have learned the main component is love, right? Because in love, we are always curious to know whether, the beloved is satisfied or not. The only thing we want is the beloved to be satisfied. And Arjuna, he's a pure bhakt. So he wants to know this so that he wants to know whether Krishna is satisfied with his approach, So that's the reason why Arjuna is asking this, to just secure his position. Yeah. So with, and before we have visited this, right, quite a few times, that absolute truth, there are 3 features of absolute truth, right? The first one is the Brahman aspect, right? Now, Brahman aspect is understanding that absolute truth is impersonal, right? That absolute truth is, the light, yeah? And the path which is taken by, this path is taken by Gyan yogis. And, their result is that they get, Brahman realization. Yeah, that the Brahma Jyoti, their destination is Brahma Jyoti, right? So, and the second, feature we learned about was Paramatma form, right? Now, Paramatma form is the primary focus of Ashtanga yogis, right? The super soul, yeah? Understanding of the localized super soul, right? Now, this is the path for the meditating, the Ashtanga yogis, like I said, Dhyana yogis. Yeah? Now, the result of this is Paramatma realization, unlike the prior one where it was Brahman realization. So the result of this path is Paramatma realization, but the destination is also Brahma Jyoti for this class of people. Now we come to the third, the topmost aspect, which is Bhagwan aspect. Yeah. Now this is the understanding that the supreme truth is a person. It's a personal. Yeah. And the path here is, Bhakti Yoga. This is the path for Bhakti Yogis. And the result of this is that they have Bhagwan realization. And the destination for them is Vaikuntha planets. Yeah? So this is what we have learned so far. Right? Now, also, just before we go further into 12th chapter, it's not that we are hearing this for the first time, right? That the personal form of Krishna, is the highest realization. We have learned this in several, from the start of Bhagavad Gita, from second chapter itself. There are various places where Krishna has again and again, slowly highlighted. And we saw how chapter-wise our consciousness level has increased, with the understanding. So this personal form is the highest realization. It has been mentioned in several places in Bhagavad Gita. Yeah, and it starts from 2.61. It states Tani Sarvani Samyamya Yukta Asita Matparaha. That Matparaha, again, Krishna highlighted, right, for the first time, on me, for me. And then we came to third chapter, 30th verse. Again, Mai Sarvani Karmani. He says Mai again, right? Again, the person. And then fourth chapter, we learned about 4.9 was Janma Karma Chamay Divya. Yeah. So there were several, from fifth chapter, sixth, again, sixth chapter, Yogi Nama Api Sarvesham. He described the whole of Ashtanga Yoga. And in the end, it was concluded that the topmost yogi is, Badkate Nantaratma. Shraddhavan Bhajate Yo Mam. Again, he said, with faith, the one who worships me. Right? That's how he concluded. Then again, seventh chapter, we learned the first verse where he highlights about, that touch to me, about hearing is the key, about me. Yeah. And from me. So, and then 14th verse we saw again, so again, 8th chapter we saw the, that Antakale cha mam, again, at the time of death, one who remembers me, he says. Right? Then 9.34, man manava bhava madbhakto. We learned there also, Madhya Jimam. There was Mad so me, become my devotee. And so, and then 10.8 to 11 was the Chaturshloki Bhagavad Gita. And it started with again Aham Sarvasya, right? Aham, me. And then we learned today again, we revisited the last verse of 11th chapter. That again he highlights that Mad, Mam, and Mad, all these again. So this is not something we have been consistently seeing this. And again, why Arjuna is asking is just to be sure, right? Like I said, to be satisfied, that Krishna is fully satisfied and pleased. And further to that, we also learned in, the yoga ladder aspect, right? That the different yoga ladder, and how Bhakti Yoga is a kind of one-stroke method, we learned, right? It's a lift system rather than the ladder, right? So, and that is easier that will be the quickest process for us to get away from this material plane, right? Now, what will Krishna? We are entering into the second portion of today's second section, where Krishna is answering Arjuna's question. Yeah. Now, this is the second shloka, where Krishna says that pure devotees of Krishna are most perfect in yoga. Right. So he highlights here that his personal form, is the most perfect way to worship. Yeah. So maybe we can, Hare Krishna Prabhuji, will you be able to read it?
Yeah, yes, Mataji. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha May Avesha Mano Ye Mam Nitya Yukta Upasate Shraddhaya Parayopetaste Me Yukta Tamamataha. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said that those who fix their minds on my personal form and are always with great and transcendental faith are considered by me. Bhagavad Gita told.
Thank you. So here we see how Krishna is very clearly defining Mai Avesha Manoema, right? So he's clearly highlighting here that Mai Avesha Manoema, Mam again, right? Those who fix their mind, Mano, right? Who fix their mind on my personal form, yeah? Yeah. And Shraddha, again, what is he highlighting? With faith, with great and transcendental faith. We have learned this before, right? So one who worships him in his personal form with faith and devotion, right, are to be considered the most perfect in yoga. That's what he's saying. Yeah. Now, this shloka actually, when Arjuna is asking that question and Krishna is answering, it is crystal clear that Krishna is saying his personal form, and he's saying here as part of answering Arjuna that some who is engaged in me, who with faith and with devotion. It is very clear that when he's saying my avesha, right, mam, so it is clear that on me, right? So there should be no area of doubt here, right? So in the purport, Prabhupada has mentioned, maybe Jyoti Mataji, will you be able to read it?
Yes, Mataji. A pure devotee is constantly engaged. Sometimes he chants, sometimes he hears or reads books about Krishna, or sometimes he cooks prasadam or goes to the marketplace to purchase something for Krishna, or sometimes he washes the temple or the dishes. Whatever he does not let a single moment pass without devoting his activities to Krishna. Such action is full samadhi. Hare Krishna, Bhagavad Gita 12.2. Purport.
Thank you. So it's so clear that a bhakti, a bhakt, right? It's bhakti yoga is always being engaged in activities which give pleasure to Krishna. This is how a bhakta we see. They will undergo austerity, problems, right? But all the time, they are engaged in Krishna service, right? Versus to a karmi, where the focus will turn into self, right? Self-sense gratification, right? So whether a pure devotee, any activity they are engaged in, they think their mind is always absorbed in Krishna, and with that love, right? So that's what this purport, gives us an idea. Now, coming to so far, Arjuna asked the question, who is better or most perfect, impersonalist or personalist? And Krishna in second verse says, the one who worships me in personal form, with devotion and faith is perfect. Now Krishna is going to give us about the impersonal, So third and fourth shloka talks about the process and destination of impersonal Brahman worshippers. Okay. Now, see the translation of the shloka is, but those who fully worship the unmanifested, that which lies beyond the perception of senses, the all-pervading, inconceivable, unchanging, fixed and immovable, the impersonal conception of absolute truth, by controlling various senses and being equally disposed to everyone. Such persons engaged in the welfare of all at last achieves me. Okay, so he is now, we are talking about impersonal Brahman worshippers. Yeah, he's giving the characteristics of impersonal Brahman worshippers, right? Like it is unmanifested form, it's impersonal, it's not personal, right? It's impersonal, and then it lies beyond our perception. It is inconceivable. It's imaginable. It's all pervading. It's indefinite. All of that, and then the process they follow, is they control their senses, and of course they are engaged in welfare for all, because they are also transcendentalist, right? Like we said, right? Now, how, when we talk about senses, the way they work is that these jnanis, they think that if they kind of, undergo happiness, then eventually distress will also be there, and that's why, if they have a mindset that if they take pleasure, then soon distress is going to come on its way, because both go hand in hand. And that's the rule in this material world as well, which is right. So they do all the austerities they do it, purposely, so that they can tame their mind. They try to control their mind by rejecting the demands of mind. That's how it is. For example, in summer season, it's very hot, so they purposely make their body undergo more heat, so that their mind gets under control. They learn to control the senses. They, for another example can be, there are so many nice fruits, right, around, nectarian fruits, sweet fruits. They tend to reject those, because they kind of, try to control their senses against the nature. But similar thing, how bhaktas do, so jnanis, they reject the sweet fruit, but bhaktas, we as bhaktas, we do not deny our senses. Rather we offer that fruit and then we take the prasadam. So we try to engage our senses, such that we dovetail it to Krishna. So that's the difference. And what jnanis do, it definitely, it sounds so difficult, right? Controlling that against our nature, it is difficult, and that also, might let the fall down, because the mind, the senses are so strong, it can help easily to fall down. Whereas we as bhaktas, we dovetail it everything towards Krishna, through Krishna. So eventually we get purified, and then we don't artificially control these senses. Then because they get controlled, because like we studied in the second chapter, we get a higher taste, which is Krishna, right? So in bhakti there is dependence on Krishna, whereas here the jnanis, the main fallback here is that they don't have devotee association, and they are not dependent on Krishna. Those are the two aspects. But like Krishna says in this verse, in the end, at last they achieve me. So the destination, these impersonalists and personalists, Krishna is saying both can achieve, but the difference is that we have to understand, for jnanis, it's a long, difficult path, and we learned it in 7 point, I think it was 19, right? Bahunam janmanam ante. Jnanvan ma prapadyante. Vasudevam sarvamitim sa mahatma su durlabha. It will take bahunam janmanam. It will take lots and long, millions of lives for them, to reach Krishna. Yes, the destination might be same, but the journey is going to be long, very long and difficult. Both. So jnanis may also reach Krishna, but after a long endeavor, long period. And that too, when they come in association with a devotee, only then they reach Krishna. Because the main factor to go to Krishna we need is love, right? And that they will only get when they come in association with a devotee. Okay, so with that, we will move to the fifth shloka. So Kavya Mataji, can you recite this?
Yes, Mataji. Troublesome path of the impersonalist. Kleshodhika tarastesham avyaktasakta chetasam avyakta hi gatir dukham dehavadabhir avapyate. For those whose minds are attached to unmanifested impersonal feature of the Supreme, advancement is very troublesome. To make progress in that discipline is always difficult for those who are embodied. Bhagavad Gita 12.5. Hare Krishna.
So yeah, it's very crystal clear here. I think what Krishna is saying, right? For impersonal feature, those who follow that, the advancement is very troublesome. Yeah. And to make progress in that discipline is always difficult for those, right? So see, why it is difficult? Yeah, because Krishna says it's difficult because they undergo, first of all, severe austerities, right? Which is in itself very difficult. Yeah. But the other thing is also that when we have a form, in front of us, we ourselves have a form. So it's easy for us to correlate with something which in itself has a form. And for impersonalists, they don't have form, to contemplate on. It becomes very difficult for us to relate ourselves with something which is not like us, right? So it's like an indirect process, right? So we have to, for us, when we see Krishna's photo, deity, it's easy for us to, contemplate on Krishna. We have a form in front of us to relate to, because the main thing in bhakti is reciprocation, right? We have talked about this so many times. We feel the reciprocation when we have a form in front of us, and that's why that's a big challenge, and that's why it's very difficult to just focus or contemplate on something which is void, which is just a light, versus to a form, right? And that's why Krishna is saying, okay. So yeah, we are just correlating this with a story from Radheshan Prabhu's lecture. Let me just bring up all the pictures. So this is a story about a son-in-law, and he was actually visiting. His wife had been to his father-in-law's place, her hometown, and he, was visiting that place. Now, when he reached that town, it was a small village, and when the son-in-law reached that town, he didn't, he could have easily called up his wife or his father-in-law to ask, right, the directions to home. But this son-in-law, because he had that ego with him, he didn't approach, either of them to ask for direction. Rather, he started exploring on his own. Yeah. And he started, thinking that this way, maybe the direction might be the right way. And he then, based on his guesswork, he started, walking towards it. Now, then he saw a group of cows there. Yeah. And then he could remember, oh, my father-in-law had a farm. He has a farm. And these cows look very familiar to his farm. So, because, and these cows, by the end of the day, they have the habit of going back to their farm, right? So I'll just follow them and I'll reach them. So he then started, with all his assumptions and everything, he was eventually chased by these cows and bulls so badly, while he was following, because he was trying to hold one of the tails so that he doesn't miss the way. And he really suffered, on the way. He got stamped, in between the cows and the bulls, he had a hard time. So finally, he reached the home of the father-in-law. And there, looking at his condition, those people thought that it might be some thief or some beggar who is trying to force himself in the house. And they started, beating him up. And then eventually he ended up saying that, no, it's your son-in-law. please recognize me and all of that. So he had to undergo the whole turmoil, why? Because he was putting his endeavor on his own without being dependent on anybody, So this is how similarly Gyanis are, they try to endeavor on their own rather than depending on Krishna. They may reach the destination like the son-in-law did, but after a lot of troubles. Yeah. And throughout, coming out of the story, throughout the life, if you are, looking for one particular, like if, for example, Gyanis throughout their life, throughout their tenure, they have developed the attachment to the avyakta, right, to the unmanifested form, right? They don't have devotee association. They are not dependent on Krishna. Now, when throughout their life they have been choosing this route, suddenly at the end of the life, switching to the personal form of Krishna, it is very difficult because you have a pre-mindset set up. So that's why it is very difficult. They tend to maybe reach the destination, but after a lot of difficulty and trouble. Yeah. It's like also the other example which was given there was like a person fallen in well, right? So say you are fallen in well and, you try to come up by the help of a rope, but this rope is tied to an, impersonal thing, like maybe a tree or a nail or something. Yeah. Now, in this case, even though you have the rope, but you have to put so much effort on your end. You have to put all the effort at your end to come up the well, to come out of it, But just imagine if the rope on the other side was held by a personal form, by a person, then at your end to come out of the well, you don't need to put all the effort. The person out there will pull more effort to pull you up, right? So it makes it easier rather than having someone in person. Okay, so these two examples are just for us to understand that the path is very difficult for impersonals, even though they might eventually reach, but with a lot of effort. Yeah. Now, with that, we move to the last shloka of this section, the second section, which says bhakti, the simple and easy path of personalist. Yeah. So the sixth shloka says, ye tu sarvani karmani mai sanyasya matparaha ananyenaiva yogena mam dhyayanta upasate. And 7, tesham aham samudharta mrityu samsara sagarat bhavamitna chirat partha mai aveshita chetasam. But those who worship me, giving up all their activities unto me, and being devoted to me without deviation, engaged in devotional service, and always meditating upon me, having fixed their mind upon me, O son of Pratha, for them I am the swift deliverer from the ocean of birth and death. Yeah? So it is very important for us to learn from this shloka that those who worship the personal form of Krishna, he himself comes, he swiftly delivers us. He loves us,